Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in creating this Asteroid Necklace, a very, very simple right angle weave technique featuring our RounTrio bead. You can use a variety of different sized crystals in this, as well as different colors and combinations of seed bead sizes. This will work great as a bracelet as well, and you can even adapt for a pair of earrings. If you need any materials to make this Asteroid necklace, you can check the links below to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Gather up all your materials, some thread and needle, and let's get started. So to get started with our Asteroid necklace, it's very, very simple pattern. We're actually going to be doing right angle weave, which you may not realize because of the multi-hold beads. We're going to be using the RounTrio in the metallic Aqua. And the important thing to look for is that you make sure that any multi-hold bead that you're using, that you have the number of holes that you are supposed to, so that all of them have 3 holes. I'm making sure holding them up to a light board or just poking your needle through, because this bracelet or this necklace pattern is going to get really long and you'll be very sad if you get to the end and one of your holes is blocked. So I have 0.006 wildfire beading thread here. I'm going to be doing it with white thread, but I'm showing you the example with green so you can see it a little bit better. And I have a stop bead on the end of my thread. Because we're doing right angle weave and making a whole 18-inch necklace, you're going to need a fair amount of thread. So we will be adding thread to this, unless you want to start with a 14-foot piece of thread. I'm going to be starting usually with 5 feet of thread, and then we can add on from there. I have a stop bead on the end of my thread, and I have a size 10 needle. You can use a 10, 11, or 12 for this. I'm going through the center hole first of all of my RounTrio beads. Faceted RounTrio, plain RounTrio, those will all work. I'm going to pick up one 15-0 seed bead, and I have the Toho in the metallic Cosmos. And then that's going to be followed by a total of 8 of my 11-0 seed beads in the Duracoat Galvanized silver. Once those 8 go on there, I'm going to put another one of my 15s. So the pattern is going to be a total of 10 beads on, with the 15s on the side and the 8s in the middle. Your next RounTrio goes onto your thread. The seed beads are going to be the top of the roll angle unit. Your RounTrio is going to be the right side. Now we're going to repeat 8 11s, then our 115. And then we're going to sew back through that same center hole of the RounTrio, the first one. So we're sewing through from the stop bead side up toward the RounTrio. See how that kind of rounds it out? It's going to get elongated as we work on it, but as you add your 35 or so of your RounTrios, you want to keep that shape. I'm going to go back through, like any good right angle weave, the top of my unit. So I'm going back through the 15s as well as the 11s. And then also I want to come out the right-hand side. So I'm going to go down through, again, that center, making sure that I'm always going through the center for this round. Going through the center and out. Now I'm ready to add my next bead. Go ahead and add your 15, followed by your 8 11s. Once you have those 8 11s on, another 15 goes on. Pick up your next RounTrio through that middle hole. That's going to be the bottom of the right angle unit. Now this is the right side of the next one. Repeat your units of 1 8 1. And then once you have that, go back to the RounTrio that your thread is currently coming out of. Sew from the top towards the bottom to make it circular and rounded. And then that next right angle unit gets established. To keep building and building and building, you're always going to sew through your next grouping of seed beads after coming out through the RounTrio. 15 O's included. And then after you get through all of those, you want to make sure you're always coming out your far right bead. So I'm going to sew from the bottom to the top of the RounTrio. So again, I'm going to keep building, keep building, keep building, doing a repeat of this pattern over and over and over again. If you want it to be about 18 inches, you're going to look between 32 and about 35 of your beads. You can even make it longer and do 40 of your beads here in your round trios as you build in the whole length of the piece. The necklace clasp that you use, and I'm going to be using a Potomac's Push Clasp along with a pretty color shift Bermuda 14 millimeter Rivoli. Those are going to go on, and I'm actually going to wear this to the side. So my necklace pattern is going to be the same the whole way throughout, and I'm going to wear the clasp nice and showy and flashy on the side of the piece. Once you're finished with the base of the necklace here, so you can see it's nice and long, about 20 inches is what you want if you want it to be about 18. Now that's going to include an inch for the clasp as well. Coming out my last round trio bead, I'm going to get ready to add my Potomac's clasp. And again, I'm using the rhodium plated 14 millimeter Rivoli clasp. So I'll put my Rivoli in there after the fact. You can do that ahead of time if you want to. That way, if anything happens to go wrong, you need to take it out or re-glue in, you can do that ahead of time. I'm coming out of my last round trio, and I have on the thread and needle 1 15-0 followed by 4 of my 11s and 1 more 15-0. So instead of 8, just 4. I'm going to take, so it's not super heavy as I work down, my tongue out of my clasp. So through the tongue once, go back down through that 15, add in 4 of my 11 seed beads, and then 1 more of my 15. As I add that in, I'm going to sew back through that center hole of my round trio, and that connects the clasp to the end. I'm not using a wire guard because I want it to sit fairly close since I'm going to make it a side focal piece on the actual necklace. And I'm going to sew back up through all of this and reinforce. So coming out the round trio, I want you to sew back up through that 15, the 4 11s, and the 15 again. Make sure that you go through the clasp, because once we work our way back, we're not coming back to this end. And then I'm going to sew back through. When you sew back through, you're going to wait and make sure to come down the opposite side of your 11-Os. From here now, we're actually going to do a little bit of backtracking. So I'm going to go through the center of that round trio, and then I'm going to take my thread and needle and go back to the first hole of the round trio. So the holes are going to line up that you have your center hole and then a hole to the left and a hole to the right. We're going through and coming out that hole to the right there. Coming out now, that hole to the right, I'm going to add onto my needle and thread a 15, 1.5 by 2 millimeter rondelle, and a 15-0 seed bead. We're going to sew up through the far left hole of the round trio. Give a nice little tight pull so you don't see a lot of thread, and repeat the same thing again. 15, crystal 15, and down through the round trio through the first hole. So what that's going to do is connect the first and the third hole. Just give that nice little sparkle that sits to the top of the round trio. And then I want to get back over to that right-hand hole. So just like we did with the right angle weave here, I'm going back through and out the top of my piece. You want to make sure as you go through and you add the crystals, they're always sitting to the same side of the necklace. This will sit to the front as you're wearing it. From here, we're going to connect the far left hole of the last round trio to the far right hole of the round trio before it. So our thread's going to go along the top, and then we're going to sew back through in that same right angle fashion as we add in another row of our seed beads to go into the interior of this asteroid necklace. So I've done a couple passes so you can see the pattern, and you're coming out the left-hand side of your round trio. You're going to add in 2 of your 11s followed by 1 of your 1.5 by 2 millimeter crystal in that metallic blue color, and then 2 more 11s. Going over to the next round trio, I want you to go down through the hole that sits closest, the hole on the right. After doing so, repeat, picking up 2 11s, then 1 of your crystals, then 2 11s. From here, go back up through that hole that's closest on the left-hand side of the round trio before, the one that the thread was originally coming out of. Give a nice tight pull so that way it kind of rounds those outer strands out. And this is how it's going to shrink just a little bit because you're pulling those closer together. Go back through the 11 crystal 11 that you've just added to the top of the piece. Then once again, down through your round trio, coming out the bottom. Coming out the bottom of the round trio, you're going to repeat that crystal with the 15s on either side. Go over to that third hole of the round trio that your thread's currently coming out of, shifting your thread from the right-hand hole across the middle to the left. Give a nice tight pull, making sure the crystal kind of sits to the middle there. Another rotation of that same pattern, 15, crystal 15, and back down through that right-hand hole that again your thread was coming out of. And then you're set up ready to go again. If you want to, you can actually skip the crystals there at the bottom, making sure that your thread and needle go from the right-hand hole of the round trio that you're in to the left-hand hole, and your thread is just going to sit right behind that crystal, and you'll never see it tucked in there. So if you don't want to sew through the 15 with the crystal, you don't have to. Once again then, you're just on repeat. You're doing 2 11s, followed by a crystal, followed by 2 11s, and then down through the right-hand hole of the next round trio. Follow up with the bottom, and then again, round it out over to the top. Again, you want to make sure that your crystals, as you're creating this pattern, stay to the top of the design. This works super well for a bracelet also. And if you want to, you could even go for a third row of seed beads, adding some larger ones to the top, or even in a peyote pattern. I'm going to go through working the whole way down on the piece, and then get ready to add in my clasp and glue my crystal in there to show how it looks when it is worn. As I'm working on the piece, like I said, you're going to need to add thread unless you want to start with a really long piece. I have a tail here coming out of the one side. Ideally, you want that knot to hide behind the crystal here. So I have my piece of thread, and I've tied a new piece of thread just around the old one. So you can see it all just kind of move up and down. I'm then going to push it down next to my round trio and tie those 2 thread ends together. Now I've needed to add thread twice because I hate working with a really long piece. Once those 2 thread ends are tied together, if you need to, you can kind of grab with the pliers, force that down as close as you can to the bead, and then do another knot. Put your needle on your new thread, and then once you're finished, you'll burn down the thread ends as close as you can to the piece itself. I have another section back here. You can see I hid that knot behind the bead as I was working with it, and I'll burn that thread edge down there as well. So I'm going to trim these down, continue on, adding in my crystals to give that nice dark blue pop. So as the base is starting to get longer and longer as far as adding in your crystals, you can see how the round trios start to get a little bit closer together than when you had it separated and just doing the base line. If you want to, you can also comment below and give your feedback if you did a different count of seed beads. Say you wanted them even closer together, even more rounded, or having them further apart, adding more seed beads in. You can also give a little bit more bling by adding some crystals to the top. And if you want to make it really fancy, you could include a crystal briolette on the bottom section of your seed beads at that beginning start section. So I'm continuing on adding in. Also, if you change up the colors, make sure to take a photo and post it in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. It's always fun to see everybody's creations in different colors and with different seed bead counts. This also works really, really well for a bracelet if you want to make it a little shorter and create a bracelet style as well, or even a couple for the drops for a pair of earrings, using some round trios here, and then even possibly going to 2 rows and doing a round duo on the top. As you get to the end of the piece, it's time to go ahead and add the clasp on the other side. So my thread currently is coming out of the side that I was continuing on with my round trio. Instead of going to the outer side to connect to the next one, I'm going to take my thread and needle down the center of that last, or first actually, round trio. Coming out that first round trio, then we're going to repeat the same thing that we did on the opposite side, adding in one of our 15 O's along with 1, 2, 3, 4 11s. One more 15-0, and then on to the clasp. If you want to, you can also put a crystal there. That's up to you instead of the 15. Going back through that 15 then, giving a nice tight pull, I'll pick up 4 more of my 11s. Add in 1 more 15, and then go to the opposite side of the round trio and sew through again that center hole. I'm going to reinforce this clasp going through one more time and adding my thread through, tie the knots together, and I'm actually going to take my needle and put it back on this strand and go through the opposite way of the clasp to do 3 right there on the heavier portion of the clasp. All I'll need to do then is glue in my crystal and finish up on the piece by burning down any extra thread ends that may still be there. As always, thanks so much for joining me in creating this asteroid necklace. I used about 32 of the round trio so you can see how it sits at a 16-inch necklace. I predicted 35 if you want to make that 18-inch necklace. You can have the clasp go on the side or even spin it around so you have a nice collar as well. Remember, this is really easily adaptable into a bracelet as well, the exact same pattern, just shorter. And you can also change up any seed beads, colors, and crystal sizes, including creating that drop at the bottom of the exterior loop and really changing it up to be what you want it to be. I can't wait to see all of your examples in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Remember, if you do need any materials, you can check out the link in the description of the video below, which always links to the exact products that were used, the video on the site, as well as the list of different colors and categories for these beads. Remember also, if you haven't yet, I've noticed a lot of you don't subscribe and you don't want to miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. So hit that little button in the corner so that way you subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making and share your expertise, ideas, and feedback for the awesome community that's in that group. As always, thanks so much for watching and have fun creating your asteroid necklace.